Hey guys, just here, and today I'm gonna talk about Tbc Classic, and I'm gonna go through each one of the classes. Keep in mind before I start that this is not really a tier list. That's the first. And keep in mind that most tier lists that are on YouTube, um, they are based on private server experience, and those, for example, especially for PvP, those don't really have warglaives. They don't really have um, dragon spine trophy, skull of Gul'dan, all of those really good trinkets and weapons. So the tier lists there are not really accurate for what's going to be TBC Classic. And also keep in mind that you can pretty much play anything at high ratings. I'm just going to give you my insight pretty much. And before we start, we will start with low resilience. So, for example, a BM hunter will be extremely good at the start because there's almost no resilience, but by the end you will be playing either survival or MM. So, yeah, always keep in mind that even though the class design and the class tuning won't happen, resilience will shift the meta within each season. So, with no further ado, let's start with the warrior, the first character. Warriors are extremely good in 2v2 with the Shaman, with the rest of Druid, and in Season 1 with the Paladin it's actually pretty nice. It's also good with the Disc Priest. You always want the healer with the Warrior or SLSL Warlock by the end of Season 4, Season 3. You can play with an SLSL Warlock as well. In trees, you have some comps. You can play double healer warrior. You can play WMD, WMP, which is with the priest, and you can play WLD, which is probably the strongest comp for the warrior. You can also play with a ret and with the resto shaman if you like cleaves, and you can play with the rogue and with the resto druid if cleaves is actually your thing. Warriors are extremely versatile, but they are really hard to play. They are not like in life where you just press condemn. You actually need to think about your rage, and you are easily kiteable. So a good frost mage will actually kite you. A good druid will actually kinda lock you down. So you need to use all of your abilities extremely well. Keep in mind that using, for example, intimidating shout, which is the fear, um, costs rage, also pummel, I think, even though you have a set that the hands on the PvP set remove some of that cost, I think. But yeah, overall, Warrior it's a pretty good class if you like constant pressure and just be really versatile with intervene, with disarm, with spell reflect, and with fear. It's one of my favorite specs and one of my favorite classes in the game, and it's probably gonna be my ult, depending on what my teammates choose. But yeah, warrior it's actually pretty solid all around in terms of PvP. Now let's go to the hunter. The hunter, it's kind of like a ranged warrior. You have a lot of constant pressure. Season 1 you will be playing BM hunter, but it's not as boring as BM hunter in live. You don't only press skill command, you actually press aim shot. You have access to trap like every hunter, and I think you have access to scatter trap actually. Hunters are overall extremely good in twos and in threes. In fives they are not as good, but in twos and threes they are extremely good, mostly through Viper Sting. Viper Sting it's your big spell that allows you to win um, by draining the enemy mana, but you can also win on CC chains. In 2v2 you can play with the Disc Priest and Mana Burn and Viper Sting the healer, or you can play with the Resto Druid and just CC the healer, or even the DPS and kill the healer. Easily you can kill pretty much every single class at some point. So you're actually a soft counter to rogues. Hunter against rogue, it's just really annoying for the rogue. It's actually a really overall, really solid class. I think everything, like every class, it's pretty solid in TBC. But yeah, this class has a lot of stuff you can do. You can trap, you can choose between the traps. You can use the snake trap and get all the poisons for harder dispel on the viper sting or even on the serpent sting. You have flare for rogues. You have hunter's mark to keep the rogue kind of visible to you. You have a pet. The pet is important, but it's not the most important thing in your kit. So especially if you're not BM. If you are BM, obviously the pet is important. But yeah, it's a really solid class. In terms of trees, you can play Hunter Lock Druid, which is a drain comp. You can play double healer Hunter. You can play Thug Cleave with a sub rogue. Probably you will see some KFCs with a warrior, and maybe some beast cleaves. I don't think beast cleave and KFC is that good, but the other comps are pretty good. It's overall also just a solid class. Rogue, Rogue is insane in terms of strength. You you pretty much, if you're really good, you can win every single game or most of the games, especially at low ratings on the second blind. Blind doesn't line up with trinket, so blind it's a 150 minute cooldown, while trinket it's 2 minutes. So you always have 10 seconds before the healer has trinket. Rogue has a lot of pressure. If you get warglaives, you're gonna be extremely good. They are not really that tanky, and they kind of struggle against hunters and warriors, but at the same time they have ways to keep themselves alive, and good rogues can keep themselves alive against these classes. Overall, rogue just plays with everything. In twos, you can play with a red, you can play double DPS with a red, with maybe a hunter, a warlock for sure, a mage, a feral, and you can play with healers. Pretty much any healer you can play with, I would say, but the best ones are obviously Disc Priest and Resto Druid. In trees, you have RMP, you have Roguelock Druid, you have Roguelock Priest, you have Rogue Mage Druid, you have Cleaves like with a Warrior, with a Rat, maybe with a Feral, but yeah, you have. It's a very versatile class. It has good sustained damage, contrary to Shadowlands, but I would say it's one of the harder classes to play to the most potential. You have a lot of very small skilled things you can do that will actually improve your gameplay and improve the chances of you winning by quite a bit, even though it's just small things. But yeah, Rogue overall, it's just a really good class. It's fun to play. And yeah, let's go to Shamans. Oh, I forgot, Rogues in 5v5 don't see that much play, but they can play also really well in 5v5. So, Shaman. Shaman, it's very weird, but Resto Shaman, it's actually, in my opinion, kind of good in 2s and 3s. In 2s with a warrior and with a rat. In trees with the warrior rat, with the warlock, UA warlock and the shadow priest, with the shadow priest and the rogue, with the warlock and the rogue, maybe double healers, some double healer variations with the paladin and with the warrior. Some of those are actually decent. And shaman overall, it's just a really aggressive class. If you like an aggressive healer with Wind Fury, with Purge, with Kick, with Grounding, with the Bloodlust, which is usable in Arena, which does, yeah, does give you a lot of pressure to your team, and it's an overall really good class. You don't have Hex, but you don't really have any CC. it's hard to play because you actually need to fake cast, since he's the instant healing, it's NS like the Druids, and overall it's kind of hard to play. But if you do like the offensive playstyle, it's one of the most fun classes to play as a healer. As a DPS, you don't really play elemental in 2s or 3s. You can find some comps where you can play elemental in 3s, but it's not really the powerhouse that will become in Wrath of the Lich King or even in Shadowlands. In 5s, elemental is actually one of the best DPSers though. So 5v5, it's big for elemental. It's probably the best class in 5v5, and it's insanely fun. What more? Enhancement. Enhancement has a few comps that can play, but and it's fun, but it's still kind of like classic, where you kind of need the Wind Fury to proc to actually do a lot of damage. So it's kind of a little bit of RNG, but overall, Shaman as a class, it's really solid. It's really fun to play. I actually played it a little bit in an arena tournament back in the day, in the old arena tournament, and it was fun. Now to Warlock, this is gonna be my class. Warlock is just insanely fun for me, and has a lot of intrinsic. It has a lot of like, kind of like the rogue, small things you can do that maybe even your team won't notice, or even the enemy team won't notice, but you can do a lot of neat stuff. And I'm only gonna share one, but for example, blind, if you play with the rogue, blind breaks to dots, and you don't really, if you use the blind, you don't really remove dots. So one thing that you can do as a warlock is, for example, get Curse of Agony on a druid. For example, you're playing 2v2 with a rogue and you're facing like a druid something, and you put Curse of Agony on the druid, so he thinks you're gonna like make a swap on him. He tries to move, and the rogue goes, he blinds, and you Curse of Tongues the druid. So you remove the agony, and the druid sits that full blind. There's a lot of stuff like that that you can actually do to mind games the enemy team. You have Devour, you can devour magic, and overall you're extremely tanky as SL. And as you weigh Warlock, it's kind of like a glass cannon, but uh, but it's also really fun to play. Destro, it's pretty good in 5s, in 2s also with a rogue. It's actually pretty decent, and in 3s with a mage and with a shaman. But overall, and it's really fun to play in BGs. But overall, like SLSL just takes the win, the W, and it's really versatile class. It's good against everything, pretty much, until rogues get to warglaives, obviously, and just one shot your pet. But it's really fun class if you like the rot playstyle and you like being tanky. Now let's go to the priest. Priest is one of the best classes in TBC overall. It's one of the most fun, and I'm gonna start with Shadow. I think Shadow Priest is incredibly underrated in the private server scene. I think from the streamers and from all the videos I watched, I think there is legit zero good Shadow Priests in the private server scene at the moment, and that's why they are incredibly underrated. Shadow Priest, it's a beast in 2v2 with a rogue. It's one of the best comps in my opinion. Silence can't be removed unless dispelled, so it can't be trinketed. It doesn't share the R with the counter spell or spell lock. It's just incredibly CC. Off the silence you have fear, and since classes don't have that much mobility, the priest doesn't really need that much mobility. That is the weakness of the priest. Priest in terms of mobility, it's extremely weak with Shadow Priest and Disc Priest, but overall, I would say Shadow Priest it's actually a pretty good class. Their weaknesses is obviously having to cast everything, not having disperse and going home. Um, but I think we will see some neat Shadow Priests in Tbc Classic that will show how strong Shadow Priest is in twos and how strong they are in threes, because we don't really see, for example, comps like Rogue Priest Shaman, and I think it's a really good comp. And with Bloodlust, Shadow Priests are actually just beasts in terms of damage. This priest it's probably the best healer in season 1. It's just incredibly good at the start because of the shields. You don't really need to heal that much, and shields are overall extremely good at the start of every expansion pretty much. These priests have access to some of the best comps in the game, and they are really fun to play. It's a really aggressive playstyle. It's kind of like Shadowlands or live game, but in a different way. You need to be careful with kicks. If you get kicked, you can't really Shadowman like on live, so you don't really have access to heals. If you get kicked on Flash of Light, not Flash of Light, heal or whatever you do as a priest, Flash heal. And yeah, it's just a really good spec. In terms of 2v2, you can play with any DPS as a priest, to be honest. That you will be fine. You have mana burn as disc and as shadow, but as disc it's faster to cast, and it's just an overall really good and really fun class to play. Is the weaknesses are just really the mobility and being a little bit squishy against some of the melee DPSers. Mage, it's a beast. Like always, it's good in twos, threes, and fives. In twos with a rogue and with a disc priest, maybe with a druid, maybe with a warlock, and maybe with a shadow priest. They are incredibly versatile. They just have a lot of damage. You don't really like shatter. It's your big bang, if you want to call that. But outside of shatter, you still have a lot of damage with fire blast, with arcane missiles, with just using all of your toolkit. Your toolkit it's insane, and it's just a really well designed class at this point. It's hard to get chips on healers in Tbc Classic because you don't really have deep freeze yet. That comes in Wrath of the Lich King, and you don't have Shimmer, so it's kind of hard to get chips. But at the same time, there's no the healers don't really have that many stops as they do have on live, so it kind of evens out. In trees, your best comp is RMP by far. It's not close, and you can play other comps like Warrior Mage Disc Priest, which I think it's extremely underrated on the private server scene. And you can also play with a Warlock and a Shaman, or with a Warlock and a Priest, but it's not as good as those two comps. Oh, got disconnected. Let me open again. But yeah, like Mage overall is just an incredibly class. It's just really versatile. You can remove curses, so you can actually remove the curse of exhaustion, curse of agony, curse of tongues. So it's just a really versatile class. And now I think I'm only missing, oh, okay, Druid. I'm missing two classes now. Druid. Druid in PvP, if you want to play Druid, you really want to play. You have three specs that you can play. You can play. I saw some boomies back in the day, but I don't think it's like a good spec because you get to them. But in twos, it's pretty good. You go Dream State, if I'm not mistaken, and you just have a lot of mana, and you just have a lot of damage as a druid. It's really good with a rogue. It's only really good with a rogue, but yeah, it's actually really fun to play, I guess. And then you have feral, but feral it's not really strong. You can play in twos with how is it called, with a rogue, but other than that it's extremely hard to play with any other, like with the healer for example, like you see in Shadowlands. But I would say we will see some neat comps with Feral in trees, like maybe FMP. I'm actually curious to see. As Resto, yeah, just the best overall healer. They start really slow with no resilience, so in season 1 it will be extremely hard to keep up with the BM hunter damage, with the rogue damage, with the warrior damage. But as as the season progresses and you get more gear and you get more resilience, druids become powerhouses in PvP. The weakness of a druid is just not having magic dispel, and I think that's pretty much it. Um, yeah, it's just not having magic dispel. Oh, in terms of mages, the weakness of the mage is obviously pretty much mana burn type of effects, like mana drain, like mana burn, and like viper sync. And now for last, Paladin. I think Paladin will be better in Tbc Classic than it was in the real Tbc. I think people finally understood how to play Paladin. I think good Holy Paladins can be extremely strong in 2s, 3s, but mostly 5s. And I think good Red Paladins will actually be quite insane, especially with a warrior in 3s and with a shaman, and with a shaman in 2s. I think they are legit really good. Obviously, they get extremely countered by Warlock teams. I think Warlock and Mage teams just completely counter Paladins to some extent, but the Shaman kinda brings, and since most Paladins play with a Shaman, with a Resto Shaman, or even with an enhancement if you're Holy, the Shaman kinda hides the weakness of the Paladin, which is being easy to CC with grounding, with shock, and with yeah, grounding and shocking and tremor. So yeah, I think I've made all of those. Yeah, okay, that's it, guys. Like, keep in mind that it doesn't really matter what you play as long as you try to improve in that class. So if you want to play like a warlock, just play it. I don't think it will matter. If you want to play like a elemental shaman playing twos, you will get rating, boys. Like, I honestly believe TBC, it's the expansion where TBC and Rat are the expansions where every single class can just get gladiator if if they play well. So just go at it and have some fun, because yeah, it's just a game. Just have some fun, just enjoy the game, and hopefully you will get rating. As for weakness and strengths, every single class has weaknesses and strengths. Some of those, and it's really hard to say. For example, rogue, it's the best class overall. Most say that. I would say it's the closest to the best. But for example, if you play rogue and you imagine you play rogue because you've heard it's the best DPS in the game in TBC, and then you face a hunter, you're like, you're just gonna get completely played out, and you're gonna be like, is really this the best class in the game? Like, you just need to learn the strengths and the weaknesses of each class and of each comp, and play to your strengths and make them play to your strengths. It's really different. It's really different. TBC Classic. It's gonna be really different to Shadowlands. And keep in mind that you're gonna lose a lot of games if you're a live player and you go against all of these private server players, and you're probably better than them, by the way, but you're still gonna lose the first few games. But then you can just make a new team, and whenever you're like a, a well-oiled wheel, you just make a new team and you improve your win-loss. And yeah, but yeah, guys, that's it for me for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. don't forget, Tbc Classic is coming, and hopefully it's actually a good game. Blizzard doesn't tune stuff, doesn't start to make crazy changes, and hopefully they don't over make changes, and people actually enjoy the game. Okay, guys, thanks for watching. Peace.